Welcome to Awaken and Ascend. This is the place for leaders, changemakers, and helping professionals and the like to gain valuable insight from our transformational experts all around the world so they can create greater impact from a deeper sense of wholeness and cultivate a freer and more fulfilling life. Have that impact that you want to have out in the world from your deepest expression and passion. The way I usually talk about passion is when you break it up, that I is what you pass on in this lifetime. And so I love bringing in the guests from around the world to support that and express who they are and what they're doing through their work to help us all come to a full self-actualization of why are we here at this time, and to be able to sustain the energy to break through all the noise and the chaos. And I love to introduce you to today's guest because we're going to be exploring how trauma impacts our leadership capacity. She is Mariana and the founder of the Commitment to Growth Somatic Coaching, where she helps women heal insecure attachment and complex trauma to break the cycles of anxiety and self-abandonment. Drawing from her own journey out of PTSD and her background in neuroscience and nervous system energetics, she guides women to cultivate inner safety, radiant confidence, and embodied authenticity, proving that trauma is not a life sentence, but a path to wholeness and empowered love. Mariana, I am so excited that you're here. Welcome.
Woohoo! Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. That was incredible. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Mariana Jimenez, tell us, where did all of this begin for you?
Yeah, so I made my debut into coaching back in 2023
Hmm.
after a career crisis. So, like many people, I thought I was going to be a doctor, because I thought from my, I guess, what I'd learned from society is that that was like the biggest calling as far as the impact that you could make in the world, right? Like medicine being the profession that provides the greatest impact, which all power to doctors. It is such an incredibly demanding profession, but that was all I knew. And then I went into healthcare working as an exercise physiologist, and I realized that it just didn't provide that vision of at least the Western system of holistic health that I believe in, from that spiritual and emotional standpoint as well. So naturally, during a career crisis, I took a life coaching course and loved it as kind of that first avenue into this work. And then I was floating in the space as a like general resilience coach for about um a year. And then what happened is during that time, I was really struggling to feel like the impact that I wanted to make was only going so far because I was approaching things from a very cognitive, um, kind of mindset targeted framework, which works. But for those of you who understand holistic health and the body and how the body keeps the score, you understand that that only goes so far. And what eventually pivoted me into somatics was, as you mentioned, my own journey into PTSD. So in September of 2024, I was working through some of my own wounds around codependency. And what happened is I unearthed a memory from a traumatic sexual assault that I experienced at 19 years old that I had never voiced. I very much tucked it away in a box and put it in my subconscious and just didn't touch it because it was way too scary to. And I also didn't have the language or the confidence to call it what it was. And what ensued was weeks of panic attacks, flashbacks, um, paranoia. Like I couldn't leave my house
Hmm.
for 2 weeks because my brain was just doing all of these crazy things, seeing everything and everyone as a threat to my safety and to my well-being. And the therapist that I'd had for 3 years up until that point, it took her 3 sessions to tell me, I think you need to go see a psychiatrist because I can't help you. Right. And it was devastating to hear from someone that I trusted for so long that like I took it as almost like I don't have faith in you to get through this. And of course, that wasn't the message that she was trying to transmit. But when she hadn't seen the whole picture, it kind of felt like she was giving up. And I didn't feel at that point that I had exhausted all my options. So instead of going to a psychiatrist, I just knew something in me hadn't been reached yet. I hadn't done the full scope of the work to really understand and process what had happened to me. And that's kind of how I fell into somatics. I was like, well, if talking isn't sufficing, and even EMDR, eye movement reprocessing, for those of you who don't know what that is, was only working to a certain extent. I was like, well, what if I let my body tell the story, right? Because I would notice certain behaviors and reactions to things that come from a instinctual place of memory within, right? And so I started dancing. I started doing somatic art to process emotions. I started singing. I did the scream therapy into my pillow. And as I really sank into my body for probably the first time in my life, my body started to trust me again, right? And as the story started to unfold and my body had the chance to tell its story, not just my brain reciting what it perceived or simply recalling it like moment to moment, the flashback started to stop, the anxiety started to get better because I reconnected with myself wholeheartedly. And I loved it so much and it was so effective for me that I went on to become certified as a somatic attachment coach, which we'll go into today.
Yeah.
But that's how we got to be here. And it's the medicine that I'm sharing with the world now. So
Wow.
thank
Thank you. Thank
you.
you so
Thank
much
you.
for having the willingness to move through that, to be able to navigate that and get to the root of what was really going on and how to fully inhabit your body and
Mhm.
find a way to feel safe again and to trust yourself and your body to trust you and to really come back into alignment with who you truly are. And
Yeah,
thank goodness that energy of that trauma was able to release and surface at a time when it seemed like you couldn't handle it, but you were definitely handling it. And
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
therapist couldn't. And so, and
Yes.
so we go into other resources, right? Sometimes we do
Mhm.
need to expand our support network and access other places that can help us to expand and more deeply root in ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And to accept all parts of ourselves, right?
absolutely.
Completely,
Yes, it definitely wasn't a
unconditionally.
journey of just processing that one part of my
No,
story. It was
yeah.
when I say my body learned to trust me again, it meant
Mhm,
that I had to go into so many times that I self-abandoned and self-betrayed, and my body had
mhm,
just felt like it was keeping a tally of like, well, do you remember this time when tried to speak to you through intuition and you still did the thing, went out with the person you knew wasn't right for you, and all these examples. And when you start creating that vehicle where you not only let your body tell the story, but you invite it to trust you again, that's where I believe that healing into wholeness really begins. So,
yeah.
mhm,
Yeah. And there's a lot of words and like stigmatization and stereotyping and like categorizing people who suffer from trauma, who experience trauma, feeling like broken,
mhm,
fragmented, not whole in some way, right? Because
absolutely.
yeah, there's a lot that can be said around that. And so I know one of your biggest messages is to let people know, and women in particular, that you're not broken and how to embody that authenticity, like you're talking about with the somatic practices and the coaching that you
Mhm,
do and coming back into your body. So you said that we talk a little bit more about somatic attachment. I think that's a really good way that we can explain how we don't have to always chase all of these parts of ourselves that we think we need to be in order to be enough, right?
mhm,
And to,
yes,
because that really inhibits our chance to be our full potential. Then we're just into that place of conformity and performing and not embodying our true selves and our authenticity. So let's explore that. What is somatic attachment, and how does
Mhm.
that keep us from living more fully and being ourselves more fully?
Absolutely. So I'll break the term up into its two counterparts. So somatics is, I like to say, it's the practice of letting your body tell its side of the story, basically. In Greek, soma means body, and in Western understanding of it, it's how we process emotions through the body, because emotions are energy in motion, right? We have to let that energy move through us from where it's been stored within. Now, attachment, when people hear that word, it's very like insta therapy and pop psychology known now. So people will typically think of anxious or avoidant attachment in romantic relationships, which I won't go into for the purpose of this conversation. But attachment as a whole is how safe we feel connecting to life, to others, and to ourselves. And what I mean by that is, how safe do you feel forming a vehicle between yourself and the world, between yourself and others, between yourself and your heart and your mind? And so many of us experience deep trauma in early youth, specifically, where we learn that there are parts of us that are unlovable. There are parts of us that aren't enough. There are parts of us that we have to tuck away. You fill in the blank to be enough for this world. And in leadership, I see this a lot in individuals who have an attachment to specific behaviors and identities. That's something that I don't see enough spoken in kind of the world of attachment um and healing, really,
Mm-hmm.
because so many of the masks that we wear on a day to day, right? Like the boss babe and the go-getter and the hustler, those are all personas that something in us sees as necessary to achieve success and or belonging,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what happens when we form those identities out of a necessity to survive or out of fear, right? A lot of us think that if we're not working 10 hours a day, then we're not enough, right? A lot
Mm-hmm.
of us think that if we don't enter the workplace with like an ice coldness and we're not direct and emotionless, then people won't respect us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are behaviors and understandings that are acquired through life experience. But when we're talking about stepping into wholeness, it's, who do you want to be outside of who you've been taught you need
Mm-hmm.
to be enough and respected and loved, etc. And what comes up for you when you're kind of forced to take off that mask? So,
Mm-hmm.
I know a few weeks ago I made a video on my social media where I said that for those of us that struggle with the I'm too much narrative, I said, it's not that you feel, it's not that you fear being too much, it's that you fear who you'll become when you stop telling yourself that you're too much. Because when you tell yourself, I'm too much, so don't speak up, don't be loud, don't be needy, right? We're doing that to prevent ourselves from being the person who asks, who raises their voice, who speaks freely, who voices their opinions, right? Because we learn that that person is not safe and won't
Mm-hmm.
be respected. And so a lot of the behaviors that we exhibit that causes anxiety or shame are responses to a perceived feeling of threat in some way. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Like a self-imposed limitation in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in leadership, and for anyone listening who wants to step into embodying that role, whether it's as a coach or as a speaker or entrepreneur, so much of the world of entrepreneurship in the West tells us that it looks a certain way, you have to behave a certain way, you have to wake up at a certain time of day, right? And we can take in so many subliminal messages that shame us into
Mhm.
being the 5 a.m. being part of the 5 a.m. club, and um the suit and tie and the perfectly polished Instagram and everything, right? But it's important to remember that anything done out of shame or fear just becomes a cycle that continues to feed itself, because you're not really showing up in your authentic essence, in your embodied truth, right? You're showing up in a way to continue surviving, and that's never the energy that creates the stability and wholeness that we desired from our dreams. So,
No, it sounds like it cultivates that self-abandonment that you often work with. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge in entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we don't have to give more because we are enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another interesting attachment that I see a lot, is this kind of, this need to always be more, right? Because
Yeah.
again, we're living in an era of a lot of education, and everybody's telling you a different strategy for how to go viral and how to
Mhm.
make 10K months and everything. And it's all great. It's great to be around that energy. But when you're constantly chasing, there's also a fear of facing oneself, right? There's a fear of
Mm.
sitting with oneself as you are. And you can never truly get to know yourself or your potential unless you sever yourself from that attachment to always be moving, right? We have to embrace life in balance. There are seasons where there's more of that, but you also have to balance it with returning to self, returning to that embodied truth, instead of always trying to chase the next thing and be the next thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So what then is, Mariana, the next safe step that people can take so that they can feel a little bit more comfortable moving inward, moving into their self and seeing what's there and being with what's coming up or with what might be buried.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My biggest advice for anyone who might feel out of alignment, or maybe like they've fallen into a routine that they don't love, or just the constant hustle,
Hmm.
I always invite the inquiry to notice what happens in the space between them thinking about something they want to do and then acting on it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what I mean by that is, if there's an entrepreneur or a coach listening, or a leader, right, who's about to sit down at their desk to hold a meeting or have a call with a client or something, or even let's take as something as common as posting an Instagram post or a LinkedIn post, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, in those moments are typically when we see the most pressure to perform a certain way to gather results or make a certain income or revenue from that action. But if everything is energy, then how are you going into that experience? And
With
from
an
what?
agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is it
Yeah.
truly your agenda that you're trying to fulfill, or is it somebody else's? And
Mm-hmm.
when you brave the space between, okay, I have to hop on this meeting, okay, I'm going to post this video, before the actual doing, what is going on for you there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's those moments when we become aware of the thoughts racing through our head when we're doing certain things that have become habit, or that we do all the time because somebody else told us that it's what we needed to do, without really thinking to ourselves, what does that mean for us, etc. That is where the answers to how you abandoned and what you think you must do to be enough
Mm-hmm.
are found, right? So,
Yeah.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, those are the energy behind the words, the nervous system energetics that we mentioned earlier. And
mm-hmm,
that's so important for visionaries in particular. And that's who I tend to work with mostly over at Lighting the Path,
mm-hmm,
because it's the energy and passion that creates the greatest impact, not
mm-hmm,
the things that we're saying and doing, right? It's how we show up in our presence, not from pressure, but actual presence, and how we can be with someone and the energy and passion that comes through that. That's what people are attracted to. And that's why they'll come to you rather than someone else who does the same thing because of your energy and your passion. And there's a lot of people who, may say all the things and maybe making those 10K and more a month, but they don't have the same kind of deep connection, that rootedness that's so important for people, especially if they've experienced trauma, to feel safe, and to be able to expand in that leadership capacity rather than contract it for fear of rejection or, not measuring up in some way. So I think that's a really important point that you make. And I'd like to hear, Mariana, a little bit more about your work and how people can connect to you so that they can experience more of this and really have a safe container that I know you can hold for them to explore what might be going on, because it is complex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So my work is twofold, but does not necessarily have to go hand in hand. So I work with women specifically who are processing complex and disruptive and limiting behaviors around their experience of attachment, right? And as I said earlier, attachment does not just have to mean between them and another person, but it's just as simple as how safe do you feel to be yourself every day? How safe do you feel walking through the world every day? How safe do you feel in your body day to day, right? We begin with those foundations to establish a healthy inner compass. And for those who desire it, we can take that work into relationships. So, understanding their attachment behaviors, things like codependency, avoidance in relationships, or if they're getting ready to maybe call in their desired partner or their soulmate, whatever that term is for them.
Mm.
And I really believe in kind of taking the stigma out of the term complex trauma, because
Mhm.
although it's a term that is very understood and a lot of people can resonate with it, it's actually a term that it might be controversial, but I actually quite dislike,
Mhm.
because the research around complex trauma, what it basically says is that, well, these reactions like persistent anxiety and depression and paranoia after you experience something traumatic are kind of weird. Like, we don't like, they kind of sit outside what would be expected of someone's experience processing something traumatic. But how I perceive that research is that we just don't actually understand what
Mhm.
trauma really does to the brain in its fullest extent yet. Because from what
Mhm.
I've seen in my own experience, in my own healing journey, and also in my clients, is that when trauma happens, particularly later in life, it erodes any feelings of unsafety that were already there previously, right? A lot of us are adults with very wounded children inside, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And life happens and it accumulates these little t, big T traumas, even though, like, who's to say who
Yeah.
experiences little or big T, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but we are living in a time that is promoting so much self-disconnection that it just keeps eroding that ability to return within and feel safe, trusting our intuition, our voice, our inner compass. And that really is my mission, is to remind women and guide them back to their own power to heal and be their own best medicine, and to be the artist that is birthed from that pain and that suffering.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's what it's there for, is to be the
Mhm.
teacher and to be the canvas from which we create something beautiful.
Right.
So yes, did I answer the full question? I went on a tangent, I was so excited.
Yeah, yeah, just sharing a little bit about your work. And I think
Okay.
that's great because that's the approach you take, is from that kind of understanding,
Hmm.
right? About what it might look like, how it might be experienced, and to really be there for the person in front of you. fully and completely and present with whatever it is that they may be experiencing that doesn't necessarily need a label of any kind, right?
Exactly.
Just
Exactly.
forget about those parts. And let's just talk about what's coming up, and what is this a path into? What is this leading you towards and
Mm-hmm.
through? And what is this a gateway to? Because essentially it is a portal. It's a rebirth. It's a labor of love,
It
right?
is.
Into more of who you are and letting go of all the parts of you that isn't, right? And so, how is it that people can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I spend most of my time on Instagram. It's at Commitment to Growth if people want to see regular updates of what I'm hosting and what I'm offering, or just um, like funny pictures of my dog and things like that. So you can find me at Commitment to Growth on Instagram. But if they would like to join my sisterhood called Belong, or get on my newsletter, also called Belong, they can visit my website. It's www.commitmenttogrowth.com. And that's a hub to learn more about me and my story and my offerings. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm not too sparsed out. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's like nice to be able to keep it simple. It's like I go here, that's where I go. And we'll
Exactly.
make it super easy for everyone too by just putting those
Exactly.
links down in the video description. You can click into that,
Thank
see a
you.
little bit more about who Mariana is and what she's been through, and then connect with her through her website, through her programs, through her Instagram. So we'll have that all down below for you. And you mentioned the compass a lot, which is really neat because I just created this sacred leadership compass for people too.
Oh,
That's a free download. So I'll have a link for that down below for you as well. And is there
beautiful.
anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
No, just thank you again for the opportunity. It was so great to speak to you and to anybody listening. And I wish you
Yeah.
all the best on your healing journey.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much, Mariana, for being here.
Thank you.
Blessings to each and every one of you. This is a journey, and like Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. And you
Exactly.
belong. Who you are makes a difference. We'll
Mhm.
see you again next time.
Thank
Bye for
you.
now. Thank you.